Welcome, everybody. My name is Glynis E. Devine, and I'm the Chief Juicer. I help women just like you and I squeeze the best out of life. And today I'm really excited because we have a wonderful guest, a featured thought leader, all the way from Moncton, New Brunswick today with us. I'm extremely excited because she's a new friend who I'm getting to know a whole lot better, and I'm thrilled to have her on today. Her name is Amber Coggan, and she is the COO, Chief Operating Officer of Pizza Delight. And for those listeners who are like me in Montreal, they're going, Pizza Delight? They skipped over Quebec. How is that possible, Amber? Huge in Ontario and the Atlantic provinces, not yet in Quebec, but we're putting a plug in there to bring it to Quebec. So welcome, Amber. Thrilled to have you on board.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
For our listeners joining for the first time today, SheSuite is a brand new Canadian initiative that I lead, and it came out of a conference that I did back about a year ago. I was in Toronto. I was chairing the Women in Leadership Forum, and a woman from Catalyst was there, and she was up sharing details, and part of my role as the chair was to tweet sound bites. And Vandana got up and she shared that 5.6% of all SheSuite positions in Canada were held by women. And I thought, I got that number wrong. That can't be possible when there's close to 30% or 30-some% of us in the workforce. And so when she sat back down, I said, I need to get that number correct. And she said 5.6%. I said, that's awful. And she said, yes. And so it was that kind of catalysted the initiative to have more women in C-suite positions, on executive boards, and being represented and having a voice. So the goal of this particular telesummit is to provide some tips, some tools, and some strategies that will address three primary areas. The first area is to arm high potentials, people who are not yet in the C-suite, but are slated to be movers and shakers in a corporation. And the goal is to help them to have a healthy mindset for senior leadership, communication strategies for some difficult conversations, and how to arm themselves with some healthy habits that will empower their ability to raise the confidence in their staff, raise their performance, and raise their productivity. So it's all about helping high potentials. The second area that the tips and tools and strategies will help is the mandate that most senior leaders have. So most senior leaders that are in C-suite positions have three primary mandates. One is to increase performance, one is to improve retention, and one is to increase revenue. And so we're going to talk about specifically how women might do that differently or the same, and what we can harness in terms of intrinsic tools to be able to do that better. I love the bio that we did on Amber because it says that she's been with Pizza Delight for 29 years. And being that, Amber, you don't look much older than 29, I think we're going to have to explain that a little bit to listeners.
Yeah, well, I started actually with the company when I was 15 years old. I did. And I worked there through school, and then I started on my management path with the company, and the company has been really fantastic with giving me lots of opportunities for growth. And I never really felt the need to go anywhere else because I was growing and developing and learning right here. So it's been 29 years.
So clearly they have nailed having an environment where SheSuite can thrive, which is the third area that we're going to offer tools and tips and strategies for. What we want to give listeners is an idea of how corporations and enterprises can build a SheSuite friendly culture. So a place where healthy leaders can have a sustainable development plan and be a place that attracts, keeps, and nurtures SheSuite leaders to thrive. So let's start off, Amber, with the first piece of the pie, the intrinsic piece. We know that we have a lot of people on the call and tuning into the podcast afterwards who may be aspiring leaders. So the first question I have is, as a new aspiring leader, what did you do specifically to prepare for that role?
Well, preparing for the role, I mean, obviously there were the specific skills in the restaurant industry that I gained over time. But really preparing myself for this role, there was the hard skills or the knowledge of the industry, but there was also the I guess, stepping up to the plate and seeing myself as somebody who could be a leader in that. So I think the real preparation for me was in gaining that confidence that, yeah, I can do this, and taking those hard skills that I learned and applying them within this environment. But certainly that shift was the confidence to say, I can do this.
Well, and truth is, wow, we're getting really bad feedback. My apologies, gang. One of the important pieces of being able to sell, and my background is sales, one of the important pieces of being able to sell anyone on anything is that we're sold ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot about the headspace that's involved in that, right?
Absolutely.
We talk, whether it's a Covey model, which I use a lot, Stephen Covey as the leadership model that I follow, or any of the other people who speak on success as a leader, they all talk about having a holistic health, and that we're only as healthy as a leader and a top performer as our weakest link, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so whether you use the Covey model, which is mental, spiritual, social, I'm missing one, physical, or any of those other like models, they all speak to having healthy habits in a lot of different areas. So I'm curious, what healthy habits have you adopted, either daily, weekly, monthly, annually, that help you be your best as a senior leader in that role?
Yeah, well, it's absolutely true. Those things do help you be your sharpest. And unfortunately, when you are a mom and busy at work and stuff, sometimes they're the first things that we throw to the wayside. But when you are able to do these things, they do make you a sharper leader. They make you better in your life. So some things that I've found have worked for me physically. We have a hobby farm, so staying physically active is pretty easy for us, as well as two young boys. But first thing for me, I think, is sleep. I need to get enough sleep. I'm much more effective when I have my sleep. I found that running has been great for me. It helps me clear my mind. I'm an on again, off again runner, but I found that it really helps me clear my mind and stay focused. And again, not just at work, but in other areas of my life.
Right.
Mentally, I am a person who loves learning, so I'm always trying to learn new things. And I've started my MBA about 3 years ago. I think I mentioned that to you.
Awesome.
So I've had a lot of opportunity to expand myself mentally in the last couple of years, and it's been really a great experience for me. I've just learned a ton, so it's been really, really great. Spiritually, I found I've downloaded a meditation app about 2 months ago.
Cool.
And I never would have believed it's been helpful for me. It's helped me maintain focus and just perspective in my daily life, not just at work, but with my kids. It helps me sleep. It's been really, really, really great for me.
I'm curious, do you want to, I'm so sorry for the video. I'm going to try something different. That may help us a bit, does it?
I have no feedback here. It's pretty clear.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I'm curious what the app is, because I'm sure listeners are curious too.
Yeah, it's Headspace.
Headspace. Excellent.
Headspace. Yeah, so it's only 10 minutes a day.
Yeah.
And like I said, I had to do it to really believe how much of a game changer it is, but it really helps me with perspective with my kids, with work. I love it. It's really good.
Everybody has a physical element. When I talk to top performers, they all have a physical element to whatever they do. And kudos to you. I'm a spectator running person. I watch people run. I don't run.
You don't run.
I decided when I turned 40, I was only going to sweat doing things I love.
Okay.
Zumba and I ski. That's okay. On all seasons. But I have to say, I admire runners. My husband runs 10K a day, and I'm in awe.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. Yeah.
When you and I talked ahead of time, you mentioned how making that decision to go back and get your MBA was a big one. Can you address that? Because I think, that's a pretty big step to take, especially when your plate is already full. How did you decide when you did?
That's a good question. Well, I had planned on starting it a few years earlier, and of course I had young children. I had a demanding job. I had a full plate, as you mentioned, as it is. And then it came to the point where I realized I was pushing it off and waiting for the time to sort of present itself. And it wasn't going to present itself. I either needed to make time in my life for this, and it's kind of like when you have children, you don't imagine how you can possibly fit it in, but when you have them, you just do. My MBA has been like that as well. It's a lot to juggle. I have a really supportive husband, which really helps. But yeah, we fit it in somehow. Sometimes I'm not sure how either, but I'm so happy I went and did it. And, you know, I've gained not only the book stuff that I've learned, but I've also learned a lot about myself during the process, because it's been quite challenging, but it's very, very rewarding at the same time.
Excellent. And you mentioned whenever we're doing something like that, our brain is just firing on so many different levels, right?
Absolutely.
Well, I know listeners already think you're Wonder Woman, but on top of that, I know that you have another cause, something that tugs very hard on your heartstrings,
yes,
that you devote time to in different measure at different times, that I would love to share with listeners. So tell us a little bit about We Cares.
So We Care is a fundraising group that myself and my husband and some friends started about 9 years ago, after my youngest son was born he had a difficult birth. He spent some time in the Moncton Hospital neonatal intensive care unit, and they were just amazing. They saved his life, and they just do wonderful work there. So when he came home and was healthy and doing well, we decided, you know, we want to do something. We want to give back. So we started this group with some people that we knew around Moncton, and we did some fundraising with them and various events. We did dinners, golf tournaments, things like that. And we were able to raise funds to buy them a neonatal simulator for training. So it's basically a baby that has all of the responses a real baby would have when they're training.
Wild, eh?
Yeah. And we also raised awareness with the government around some equipment needs that they had there in order to service the children that do come in there for services, which is a great part of New Brunswick. It's not just Moncton, it's a large part of New Brunswick. And we raised awareness and lobbied the government, and they bought some of the equipment. So we were really happy to be able to make a difference there.
Am I right? Of over $100,000, right?
The piece of equipment they bought was over $100,000. Yeah. The doll or the simulator we bought was about $25,000.
That's awesome. Huge impact.
Yeah, we were really, really pleased with that. And they do continue to do great work there at the Moncton Hospital, and it is a cause that's very near and dear to our heart. So we did this through, in conjunction with the Friends of the Moncton Hospital. So anybody who wants to support We Care can do so through the Friends of the Moncton Hospital at friendsfoundation.ca, and they just need to reference We Care, and it'll go specifically to the neonatal unit.
And I'll make sure that we put that link up when we post the recording as well, Amber. Friendsfoundation.ca, correct?
That's right.
And they just have to reference that it goes to We Care, and then that gets identified to the charity. That's and am I right? You and your husband co-chair this.
That's correct. Yes.
We do.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, no low bar there. Holy smokes.
In our spare time.
Yeah, in your spare time. Bless you. I guess that provokes another question, which is, Wonder Woman syndrome. We tend to have a lot of balls in the air. And especially with the ages you and I talked about, the challenges with having children 10 and 9, and 14 months apart, that's major busy.
It is.
Is there a price to pay for having it all?
Well, that's a really good question, one that I really needed to ponder on. And I think that there is a price. There are sacrifices that you need to make, I think male or female. I think that there's sacrifices you need to make, to get where you want to go. However, I think if you love what you're doing and you're committed to what you want to achieve, you can see them as sacrifices, I guess. But when I reflect on the choices that I made, I always had a choice, and I always chose to do those things. So yes, I missed a lot of family events and a lot of birthdays and things like that, but I really see them as sort of stepping stones to get where I really wanted to go. So I didn't really see them as sacrifices. I just seen them as part of what I needed to do in order to get where I wanted to go. But certainly, they're about choices, and you do need to choose, if you want to be at every event and you want to be home every night and to tuck your kids in, sometimes there is those choices that you need to make.
Yeah, I think being aware of the cost and also of the return, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because certainly we get huge return when we make those choices. One of our earlier thought leaders said, you can absolutely have it all. You just need to decide what your version of all looks like. And I thought that was so wise. As a young professional, that probably would have helped me to have a lot of clarity.
Mm-hmm.
My children are 31, 28, and 13. And so raising a child 18 years after I raised my first is very different. We tend to parent very differently. And I realized there were some really hard choices that we made. And I think that even a stay-at-home mom makes those choices.
Absolutely.
Even someone who's not a leader makes those choices. We make choices in life, let alone work, every day, and that they have an impact. And so I think being aware of that impact is the critical piece, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's shift to the second piece of the pie. And the second piece of the pie is really all about the mandate that C-suite has. So men or woman, they have a mandate for three primary areas, right? We talked about how do I improve revenue overall? How do I improve retention, keeping my top talent? And then how do I improve performance? Regardless, male or female, those are the three mandates that most C-suite work to. My question is, do women achieve them differently than men?
I think we do achieve them a bit differently. I think in regards to revenue, I think that there's a misconception that women are less, I don't want to say aggressive, but will pursue it as much as men will. But I think that is a misconception, and I've worked with a lot of women who are, very keen business women and certainly go after success in revenue very, very aggressively. But I think they do it differently. And I think where you'll see the most difference is probably around what you mentioned is retention and the overall performance of the organization. I think that there was a time when women were afraid to show their soft skills, if you will, in the workplace because it was seen almost as a weakness. But I think that a lot of women who have achieved success and who have become leaders have realized that, if you embrace that, that can actually be, your competitive advantage out there, if you will, because when it comes to retention, I think that women are really, really good at building those relationships and looking at the business more holistically, and not afraid to have those relationships. And I think when you're talking about your team, people are looking to not only be engaged by getting paid for what they do, but they want to belong to something. They want to be part of something bigger and be part of a team. And I think that women are not afraid to build those relationships. And I think when it comes to retention, I can speak only for myself, it's made a huge difference. People realize that, yes, we're here to do our work and we have a high-performing culture, but we care about each other as individuals. And when, another job comes along, I think those are the things that make people stay with the company. They know they're part of a team and they're part of something bigger. So I think that men and women will achieve the same end, perhaps, but they do it differently. And I think it's wonderful that women are using those soft skills to their advantage in the workplace because they really are an advantage.
You've touched on a couple of things, and that is one of the keys is having something that's bigger than us. I had a conversation with our guest on Thursday, Andrea, this morning, and she and I both talked about the challenge when professionals are so strapped, and we talk a lot about work-life balance, right? So that we put in whatever time is necessary, but we're eager to get home and make that home balance work. Really hard to engage employees to do something extra, to share their personal time in a work setting. And yet, we know from experience that when they do, when there's something more to work than just work, that we hold on to them. And so I'm thrilled to hear that that women tend to maximize that. And you mentioned the soft skills. I think at one time, and that kind of leads me into my next question, I think at one time we downplayed all of that because it made us look vulnerable and weak and manipulatable. And I think more and more that's a myth. I think more and more it's always been a myth. I think it's recognized as a myth more and more. Because leadership styles have changed, right? And I'm sure you've seen it in 29 years serving as young as 15 in a company and watching the men and women ahead of you. We've seen women leaders who were successful having to behave like a man, and that's not true anymore. Eureka! So you mentioned that soft side. I'm going to ask specifically, what 3 inherently female qualities or strengths should aspiring senior leaders tap into? What are we not tapping into enough that is inherently female that we could be?
Well, I think the first one is that relationship side.
Yeah.
I think that, again, I think in the past people have thought, forming relationships with people at work was something that would be frowned upon, and to act like a man, we sort of kept a distance. But I think that, again, it really provides a lot of engagement to people. They want to know that they're not just a number, that they're valued as part of the team. So I think leveraging those relationships to engage your employees, to retain your employees, to get the best and brightest people on your team, I think is absolutely key. I think that women, some men as well, but I think that women tend to be very good teachers. And I think that, that can also benefit you in the workplace, because you can mentor people, you can take a more collaborative approach to how you manage your company. That's something I'm really proud that we do here. We all have our roles to play in the organization, but we're a very collaborative team, so none of us have the answer. None of us have all the answers, but when we put our heads together, there's no problem that we can't tackle together. So I think that by tapping into that skill to teach people, I think is a really powerful thing in the workplace. And I think organizational skills, I think that often women are very happy to stay in the supportive roles because they're very organized and they keep everybody on track. But those organizational skills can also help you immensely when you're in a senior position. So, not to limit yourself to those supporting roles where you're helping other people stay organized, but to really use those and tap into those in the workplace to meet your own success.
So you touched on a couple of things, and I find it interesting, the organization piece, because I'm reading a little bit right now on archetypes and the feminine and the masculine, not necessarily female or male, but the feminine and the masculine in any human being, and how organization is very much a feminine quality, a feminine trait. And you touched on something that I think is one of the things I like tapping into, and that is inclusion. I think women are really, really good at pulling people into the flock, into the vision, into the workload, into the all of it, right?
Yep.
And
absolutely.
And so it's nice to see more women tapping into those soft skills and seeing good hard lines come out of it, right?
Absolutely. And again, in the past, I think women were reluctant to show those because they were seen as, almost a weakness in the past. But on the flip side of that, I think it's not only okay to show those things, but I think it really does give you an advantage, because when it comes to retaining the top talent out there, people are going to go where they feel included and they feel like they're part of the solution and they feel like they're valued. And women are so, uniquely equipped to form those relationships with people that I think, smart companies out there are going to want that more and more to engage people and to retain people.
Well, and it's the age of relationship marketing, right? Everything about how we market a product, a service, a cause, anything is all about appealing to that, to having a relationship with that person. So
Absolutely.
I think the fact that women tend to do that inherently is a huge gift, right? Let's talk specifically about corporations, because they've been able to hold on to you for 29 years. Obviously, they do something really well. And you did mention, you know, creating a place where people feel like it's that they're part of something bigger than them, right? So I'm curious, one of the other statistics that Catalyst shared in the same report as the one that I cited earlier was the fact that they polled a slew of people, and 92% of women said there is plenty of room at the top. Come on up. There are so many benefits to women being a part of that. Where only 28% of males who responded thought there was more room for women in C-suite positions. So it makes me wonder, especially based on your quote, right? You said, I don't get seen as male or female, which I love, right? I just get seen as a strong, healthy leader. And I love that. How does a corporation do that? Why don't more men want more women in C-suite? What's going on with that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've seen certainly evolution within our own company as well, where, you know, if you looked at our boardroom table 20 years ago, it was all men sitting at the table. And I mean, I'm really proud to say we are a company now where it's pretty equal, where there's an equal amount of men and women sitting at the table. And I think we make better decisions as a result of that. But to those statistics that you mentioned, they're a bit surprising, and they're also very disappointing, I have to be honest with you.
Big time.
They really are. But I think there are still people out there who think that maybe women are better suited for supportive roles, or to, you know, support men who will be in the leadership position. But I think the companies out there who are, you know, getting ready to compete into the future are really tapping into women's abilities, and they realize that that's not the case. I think that, quite honestly, the companies that still believe that will probably be left behind moving forward. And, you know, there is that misconception that, like I mentioned earlier, that those soft skills are a weakness. But again, those companies out there that are realizing that in order to compete effectively moving forward, they're really going to need to figure out how to engage people and how to attract and retain the best and brightest talent out there, are people who realize that they need a mix of men and women sitting at the table to really look at the business in a holistic, through a holistic lens. So I don't know why men would think that, you know, but I think that as we move forward, the companies that will compete effectively moving forward are certainly the ones that realize that having men and women both at the table is a competitive advantage.
Absolutely, I agree. It's interesting. One of my upcoming guests was part of a study that looked at millennial C-suites, because, of course, the next wave will be the millennials, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of myths out there. I'm a baby boomer, and so when I'm teaching, you know, I do corporate leadership teaching, and I often hear, oh, those millennials, they don't stay anyplace. They don't. Yeah. Actually, studies are proving very, very differently. Millennials are looking for a sustainable business development plan. They want a company where they can be with 10 years later. And we know people don't leave companies, they leave managers, they leave leaders. So if those relationships are strong, they're not as likely to leave. They're likely to find a place they call home. Right?
That's right. Yeah.
So let's talk about top talent. We know that what attracts somebody to a company is a respectful environment to work in. We know that everybody wants to be fairly compensated. That's true whether you're a man or a woman. Are there additional elements that are important just for women?
You know, I don't think that there are. I think that the challenge has been that women, unfortunately, there's still a gap in what men are paid and what women are paid for the same roles quite often. So I don't think that there's necessarily differences in what they want. I think that women, unfortunately, have to be more demanding to get those things that everybody wants because they haven't been getting those. But I think just like women, men want the work-life balance. They want to be paid fairly. They want all of those intrinsic motivators, you know, to feel like they belong. But I think maybe it's less of an issue for men because they are present maybe for men. And for women, it hasn't always, that's not always the case. So I'm really happy to see conversations like this happening out there, where how can we address that, and how can we make it not matter if you're a man or a woman, just that who is the best person for the position. And I think that when we get there, that will be a nice place to be. It will be a nice place to be.
Yeah. Well, and the argument for so many years has been there just weren't enough women leaders in the game, and that's not true anymore, is it?
I don't think that that's true anymore. I think it's definitely changing. And again, I can look at my own company as a reference point, and there's an equal amount of women as men around the table. But I do think that, you know, instead of wanting the workplace to change, I think having conversations like this, and for women to take action in changing that. And, you know, Sheryl Sandberg talks a lot about, you know, making sure you put your hand up, making sure that you sit at the table. Women do have to take the responsibility to take that initiative. If you want to be in the C-suite, if you want to be a leader, speak up, make sure that people know you do, you know, that you're willing to do whatever it takes, just like your male counterparts. And I think it will change. I think it is changing.
Good news. You bring up something, and typically this is the part that we do Q&A, and there's a question that's come up in the chat box that touches on what you just touched on. So I'm going to tweak it a little bit and say, you mentioned the phrase that Sheryl Sandberg coined, that sit at the table, and that you have to raise your hand to sit at the table. Did you know at 15 as a junior that that's where you were headed?
No.
Okay, good. That's good news.
No, I didn't. No, what I did know is, you know, obviously my drivers at 15 for what I wanted to get out of work were different than what they are now. But I mean,
and shoes. That's
that's right. And that money to go to the movies, I think it was at that point. But I think that, you know, there comes a time in every leader's career where we ask ourselves, where am I going? And, you know, sometimes we limit ourselves by saying, well, I could never do that, or I don't have what it takes to do that. And, you know, I think that there is a point where you have to look at yourself and say, do I want to do that? And do I have what it takes to do that? And sometimes, a lot of the time, I think people have the skills, but they don't have necessarily the will or the confidence to do it. So, you know, for me, it was looking at where I wanted to go and saying to myself, I can do this. I know I can do this. And will I have challenges? Absolutely. But I surround myself with really bright and, you know, the best talent that I possibly can. And that's, I think, the key to any leader's role is to get the best and brightest people around you. But, you know, I think the shift has to be, and do you see yourself doing it, and do you have the confidence to see yourself doing it? Because that confidence is what holds us back quite often.
That's my question. How much of it was your inner voice saying, you can do this, you got this, girl, and how much of it was peers around you or senior people nurturing that you could be there? What kind of balance was that?
Well, I think there were definitely people I worked with, you know, throughout my career that I learned a ton from, and people who were certainly supportive in helping me grow and get where I wanted to go. But I think that responsibility lies within ourselves. You know, nobody is responsible for my success except for me. And, you know, I think that people will give us opportunities and they'll help us along the way, but you need to make it happen. And I think for me, you know, I look back at my career, and there was a point where I said, you know, I was always in a senior role. I was a VP, but then there was the chief operating officer, which, you know, you're the end of the line at that point. And I asked myself, do I want to do this? And do I think I can? And the answer was yes to both. And like I said, I knew I'd come up against some challenges, but I was up for the challenge, and it's worked out very well for me. But that confidence piece, I think, is really key. And so often women are just limiting themselves to be in the supportive positions when, you know, if you want to be the leader, or you want to be the, you know, in a senior position in your company, you need to go for it. You need to believe in yourself.
All right, so maybe that's where we can lead people. When I'm doing a corporate training day, I always encourage people to choose a WOW, and WOW is an acronym, and it stands for within 1 week. Because we hear all these great ideas, we tune into these podcasts, we pick up, you know, we're always reading books. And it's the action piece, and you mentioned this earlier, that makes the difference, right? You can't just raise your hand, you got to do something.
Yeah.
So I'm going to encourage everybody listening today to pick a wow. What can you do within 1 week that's going to make an impact to nudge you towards a little closer towards that senior leadership position? So we got a lot of listeners that tuning in that are junior leaders, they're brand new, and may not have that confidence that you speak of to throw their hand up. What's one short tip that you can offer, Amber, to say, this is how you build your confidence?
Well, I think, it goes back to that sitting at the table. Don't be content with sitting on the sidelines. If you want to be seen as somebody who's a leader, you don't necessarily need the job title to be a leader. You can be somebody who brings forward solutions, not just the problems, but you can certainly be a leader without having a leadership position. Mm-hmm. So I think, sitting at the table, being part of the solution, not just bringing problems forward, but bringing solutions forward as well, but not being content with, just staying on the sidelines. Like, again, I go back to that Sheryl Sandberg saying sitting at the table, I think was very powerful, because I see it a lot when I go into boardrooms as well. You'll have people come in and the men will sit at the table and the women will sit at the side chairs. And, if you want to be seen as a leader, then I think we need to play that part and act like a leader and sit at the table.
Well, and I think historically we've been so submissive when it comes to that. We taught that it was better to be invited to the table, and that's not how business works, does it? Because what it sends is the erroneous message that we don't think we deserve nor are capable to sit at the table. Whereas when we do sit down and say, no, I have value here, or I have willingness, even if I don't have solutions, I have willingness to try and think some up, that's huge. Right?
It is huge. And I mean, it goes back to that saying that if you don't believe that you can do it, don't expect anyone else to believe that you can do it as well. So I think we need to demonstrate that, again, without the leadership position, you can still be a leader in your workplace and demonstrate that. And if you are demonstrating that in the workplace, it won't be long before the leadership position or title follows you.
Right. So choosing to be a person of influence.
That's right.
What about sister C-suite leaders, people who are already in senior leadership positions? Any suggestion to take away from today?
Yeah, I think that to continue demonstrating that, you can be a successful leader as a woman, doing it your way and embracing those soft skills. I think that the more women leaders we have out there, the more we're going to have, because people will see that it's possible and people will emulate their behavior and realize that to be in a senior position, I don't need to act like a man. I can be myself. I can embrace my own leadership style, and that will bring me success. So I think, just doing what they're doing out there and demonstrating that they're thriving as women leaders is really having a difference, and it'll continue to have a difference.
So owning that piece, owning that style.
Absolutely. Rocking it. Yeah.
Rocking it. You got it. Finally, what's the first step you would suggest to a company who's looking to create, either start or build on creating a culture where top women thrive? One tip.
Well, one tip I think is having the best and brightest people in place, regardless if they're male or female. I think that, as I mentioned, I think that the company I work for has always done that, more so in the recent years. And I'm very proud to say that, there's a lot of women in senior positions, but having the best and brightest people in place, regardless if it's a man or a woman, but you'll do yourself a favor, again, as we go forward and try to compete. You need the best and brightest at the table. And if it's a man, great. If it's a woman, great, but get the best talent around you can.
Excellent. Great sage advice. Listeners, please tune in on Thursday at 12:10 when I'm interviewing thought leader Andrea Nichols. She's the VP Finance of Triton Digital and works in the tech world, and she has some interesting insights. Join our SheSuite group on LinkedIn so that you can get updates of all the Tell 'em Summit, and stay tuned to the SheSuite site in the upcoming weeks for the recording of this session today, and for the links for friendsfoundation.ca and We Cares. To bring the show to a close, thank you, listeners, for tuning in, and to my Wonder Woman from Moncton, Amber, thank you. I just adore your tenacity and vitality. You bring so much to the role, and you are definitely blazing a trail for so many other women to follow. Thank you for graciously sharing your SheSuite wisdom with us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of the day. And remember, SheSuite.ca, where top Canadian women are changing the game. Have a great day.